Manga versus comics is a topic that's going to be debated for as long as the two are relevant, which seems like they're going to be relevant for a long time, even though Marvel movies aren't making as much as they used to be, and of course DC movies continue to flop, but still I think they're going to be relevant for a very long time. Of course, manga is just doing insanely well, better and better every single year as far as I can tell. But just kind of jumping on this manga versus comics topic, I've seen some people say that it even shouldn't be discussed because they are different in so many different ways. But I think comparison in the context of competition just makes things better for the consumer. So in my eyes, 100% valid. It makes complete sense to compare the two. Now, of course, I am making these comparisons, putting in the context of competition, because I just want them to be better. The intent of this video is it's really just positivity. Even if I say and point out some things that are negative, the intent is the outcome to be positive. Of course, I don't actually expect to make a difference. I don't expect anything I say here to be heard by anybody outside of really just random YouTube viewers. Now, I do think it's very important to be upfront and just very honest with any bias I might have. So I do have some stats. I've only read around 1,800, almost 1,900, so 1,900 comics just in general. This is including everything Marvel, DC, and indie. About 1,100 of which are Marvel, 300 DC, and the rest, they're all indie. This is in comparison to basically 12,000 manga chapters that I've read. So I've definitely read a lot more manga than I have comics, and I think that's for a multitude of different reasons, but I did want to be honest about any bias that I might have. I don't think that this affects me too much just because I have read a decent amount of comics, like 2,000. It's a decent amount. Like, I'm not going to act like it's anything crazy, but I think it's more than enough to give my honest thoughts comparing the two. Now, when making this comparison, the easiest way to go about it is through the most accessible route, and this is reading things online through subscriptions, because I don't really think that talking about piracy is really all that helpful in this context anyway. Not that I think that pirating is super wrong or anything like that. Like, technically it's illegal, but just because something is illegal doesn't mean that it's unethical. But of course there's arguments to be made, but I'm not trying to demonize that really in any way. But up first I'll be talking about Marvel Unlimited, and that's just because this is the most expensive one if you go by the regular edition, just month by month, because technically you can get a yearly, especially as I'm recording this video, they're doing a sale where it's $5.99. It would come out to being around $5.99 a month. But of course this is not the regular deal that's always going on. If you buy it month to month, it is $9.99, which is very much comparable to the likes of Disney Plus. To me, this price is absolutely insane. It's so much higher than I think it necessarily should be. If you want to think about what it should be at, it's kind of what it's on sale at right now. $5.99. It's a good price. It's an understandable price. It's more expensive than something else on this list, which is very cheap, and I think what should be the target. I mean, I'm not expecting every single company to be able to go below $5 a month for comics, but still $9.99 is absolutely insane. Now, to kind of go along with having the highest price point is the fact that it has the largest library. It has over 30,000 comics, and this is what's mostly used to justify the price. I've seen people talk about it's so expensive because it has so many comics. And I guess this kind of ties in with the price, because you can very easily get your money's worth, because comics are expensive. You can pay $3.99, $4.99 for a single comic, and it's very easy to read upwards of 5 issues in a single day. And if you do that consistently, you'll read many times over the $9.99 price. But my kind of rebuttal to that is that just because you make your money's worth, it still doesn't make it an understandable price point, especially when you're talking about subscriptions and stuff like that. Because then you got to look at stuff like Disney Plus, HBO Max, the movies that are offered there that are like $30 if you get the Blu-ray or something like that, even more if you want 4K. And just because you make your money's back or your money's worth back, that doesn't still mean that the subscription is priced at an understandable point. And that's kind of like my argument for why it should be less than $9.99, even though you can still end up making that money very easily within a day, realistically. Now, something that is going to make a little bit less sense, at least at this point in the video, is that it doesn't offer anything significant like a series like The Amazing Spider-Man, the X-Men. Doesn't offer any of these series, the new issues that come out. It does not offer anything for free. So let's say the newest issue of Amazing Spider-Man comes out. You want to read it. You won't even be able to do that, but I'll talk about that in a second. But it is not offered for free. That's what I'm saying. And if you want to read the first couple of chapters or first couple of issues of the newest, most relevant Amazing Spider-Man series, you do have to pay that $9.99 entrance fee, which does seem like, this is common sense. This should be expected, but it does tie into a point later on. And lastly, new issues are added about 3 months after they're initially released. And to really put this whole point in perspective and why this is ridiculous, Jujutsu Kaisen fans can't wait a couple of days for the work to be translated. They read the raw images that are still in Japanese kanji, and they just kind of look at descriptions describing what's happening. Like, that is how impatient some people are. So I don't understand how you think you can build up hype for like Spider-Man, X-Men, whenever you make the audience wait 3 months before releasing a new issue on this paid premium subscription. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. It's a very bad business practice, which is why I would never go about demonizing piracy, because it's kind of like they're advocating it for themselves just because it's unreasonable to put this 3-month delay. Now, the very obvious argument on why there's this delay when it comes to Marvel Unlimited is because they release single issues. It's not all collected volumes, so they still want people to get these single issues. It's very important sales numbers and whatnot, but I think that is a very lack of confidence in their product. Just because somebody reads something online, that doesn't mean they're not going to pick it up, especially given that the comic book industry is so collector focused. I just feel like the 3-month barrier is so unreasonable and needs to be taken down, especially when the service itself costs $10 a month. Like, that is just there's so many things that add up to this being pretty unreasonable. And keep in mind, I do actually have Marvel Unlimited, like, actively. I read a lot of X-Men, so like I said earlier, it's still technically worth it, but I'm very well and very open to criticizing this specific subscription. Next up is DC Infinite, and to be very clear, I'm only comparing the very standard subscription, so this is just the $7.99 a month. There are upgraded editions where you can kind of get around a lot of the cons that I mentioned, and I'll try and touch on those, but like I said, this is just covering in depth really just the standard $7.99 a month. But to kind of justify this little bit step down in terms of price, it does have around 5,000 less, with DC claiming it has over 25,000 comics instead of over 30. And then kind of the same situation with Marvel, where they don't offer any chapters for free, and there is a delay also with DC Infinite. It's actually more significant of a delay, saying that it's about 6 months, which, I already said that 3 months was unreasonable, and DC Infinite is literally doing twice that. So I think it's very obvious how I feel on these delays, and 6 months it's atrocious. Like, it's very unreasonable. You're pretty much telling your audience, like, hey, pirate our comics, just don't read our stuff legally. It's pretty ridiculous, but there is a way to kind of get around this a little bit. If you get the upgraded edition, it says it's only like a 30-day delay, which even then, it's still a delay. Like, if you have the opportunity to put them out when they're released, obviously you should do that. That's what Shonen Jump does. Things get translated and then they release them. Like, it's only a couple of days wait. 30 days, which is a month, to anything greater than that, I think it's pretty ridiculous, especially when you don't have to go through the effort of translating. I don't know how you think that you're going to build any hype for an event or a series that's coming out. Like, it just does not make sense to me at all. I also think that the UI for DC Infinite is a lot worse than Marvel Unlimited. I don't really like the UI for either one of them, but it's just something that I think should be improved upon, but it also isn't too relevant to the topics that I've been discussing so far. So just keep in mind the UI for these kind of sucks to me. To kind of put it in perspective with Marvel, if you download comics, you have to manually go in there and delete each individual comic that you download. And so if you download in bulk, you're going to spending a lot of time deleting all of those comics that you just downloaded. It's something that is very annoying that I don't really have to deal with Shonen Jump, which is the next one that I'm going to be talking about. Now, the Shonen Jump app is something that I've had for a long time. Like, I think I've only canceled it one time, and I've had it since probably like 2017, 2018, very early on within the life cycle of Shonen Jump, and it's actually raised in price because it used to be $1.99 and now it's $2.99. So a lot cheaper than the other two. And I guess to kind of justify this once again, it does have less. It has only 15,000 chapters of manga, which, like I said before, it's more than you're ever going to realistically read. So these, in all honesty, while you can of course point at it as a very good selling point, like, you're not going to read 20, 30,000, not even 15,000 chapters of manga. Well, I guess I'm already approaching that, but that's just encompassing every bit of manga that I've ever read, going outside the scope of Shonen Jump. So I guess while you could, get to 15,000, it would take a long time because I've been reading manga since I was 16, and I'm just getting to the point where I'm around 15,000, and that does count rereads. Like, I've reread Vagabond like 5 to 10 times, and then Bleach I've reread a couple of times, so that takes off multiple thousand already. So while it's possible, it's just not likely you'll get up to these very high chapter counts and just collections of digital comics. Like, it's not likely that you'll ever get there. Now, this is where the stuff that didn't make sense before might start to make sense, because there are new chapters. If you're reading Jujutsu Kaisen and you do not even pay for the premium subscription, you can get the new chapters. I think it's the 3 newest chapters of relevant series like Jujutsu Kaisen, My Hero Academia. Black Clover is not really that much of a thing anymore, but pretty much any series that is big. One Piece, for example. I don't know how I forgot about that one. But the 3 most recent chapters are free. You do not have to have a subscription to read. And the 3 first chapters, so if you want to get introduced to a series before deciding to buy the subscription, you can read the 3 first chapters for free. This is not something that's offered in Marvel Unlimited or DC Infinite. So I think just in general, the Shonen Jump app represents everything that these subscription services like Marvel Unlimited and DC Infinite, it represents everything that they should strive to be. And then the UI, this is something that I think is super underrated when it comes to Shonen Jump comparing it, because if you download a chapter, you have 7 days to read it before it automatically deletes itself. So you don't have to go through the trouble of just manually deleting things in bulk. Like, I've probably spent up to an hour just deleting comics that I've downloaded. Now, I'm talking about an hour straight. This is not, collecting all the time that I've spent deleting comics. Just like, then the number would go beyond that exponentially. I'm just talking about an hour straight of deleting comics because they don't have an automatic delete feature, at least not one that I've found or is made easily available. Like, maybe you have to do some digging for it, but it's nothing that I have found where it automatically deletes it. So Shonen Jump, in terms of its price, in terms of what it offers for free, in terms of its UI, it is just so much beyond what Marvel Unlimited and DC Infinite are. But jumping over to the not as accessible but still pretty accessible route, it's physically collecting. This is where you have to kind of deal with stuff where it is out of print, out of stock, but at the same time, this is what most people like to collect, or at least a good amount of people anyways. I can only speak from my personal experience, but most people would rather have something physically than have it digitally, at least in my experience. But manga, it's about $9.99 if you want to collect a Shonen Jump manga, like just one paperback volume. It's $9.99. It can go up to $10.99, maybe a little bit more, but with $10.99, that's like a Kodansha paperback volume 1. I think that's the case with Noragami. And then you compare that with comic books in terms of their paperbacks. There's a lot, because I have gotten something from Image Comics where the retail price was $9.99, but I think that's only to get the audience in, because the second volume with pretty much the exact same number of page counts, I'm talking about Radiant Black just to be very specific, the second volume actually might have had less, but it cost almost double. It went from $9.99 to around $15-16, but just to be more specific, Kraven the Last Hunt, that is $14.99, and then you can go to something like Reign of X-Men, $17.99, or even Immortal X-Men, which I think is $19.99. Those are all Marvel, but generally comic books, because they're made of a more high quality paper, even the paperbacks are pretty expensive, and pretty much like I showed here, sometimes doubling the amount that it costs to get one volume of a paperback manga. And I think that approach is just the wrong approach. When you're collecting a paperback, you're not trying to get the most high quality product. You're just trying to get something to collect the series in bulk. So I think that there is a bit of a misguided approach when it comes to paperbacks. Like, that's what you have hardcovers for. Like, I have hardcover deluxe editions for like All-Star Superman. I have omnibuses for like Aquaman by Geoff Johns, Spider-Man, Captain America. Like, I collect a good amount of varying content, and paperbacks, they're just not made or not meant to be the most high quality product. And I don't think it makes that much sense to try and make it this high quality paper. You want to make it the cheapest avenue in which to collect the comic books. Like, this is where you collect it in bulk. At least that's my opinion on it. So when it comes to the conclusion of manga versus comics and the way that I've done it, I do think the answer is pretty simple. Comics, they're just too expensive as they are right now. Sure, there's excuses for why they cost more. The subscriptions cost more because they offer more bulk, more volume of digital comics, 30,000, nearly doubling what Shonen Jump offers, or pretty much doubling. And then with the paperbacks, their paper quality is better. But the thing is, most people don't care about that stuff. If somebody's reading something, they want what is relevant at the time. Like, is somebody more likely to read, the very iconic Claremont run on X-Men, or are they going to try and jump in with the X-Men that's going on right now? Like, you have to think about that type of stuff. I think a good portion of people are going to jump on what's new, what's popular now, and not what is the most iconic of all time. I just think that's the realistic approach. I'm not saying it's the right approach, but there's just so many other aspects that I've tackled here today that makes me say that at the moment, comics are just a good amount behind what Shonen Jump and just manga in general is offering. Now, hopefully the lack of elitism here really came through. Hopefully people aren't thinking that I'm being super biased towards manga. I thought I've explained my points pretty well, but if you did come away thinking that, tell me how I should improve, or what understandings you came to see if it was just a misunderstanding or what. Just let me know in the comments below.